I think we can all get started. I'll just give a quick introduction of WalkingTree Technologies for anyone joining us for the first time. WalkingTree Technologies is a technology-focused company with a core focus on designing and building cross-platform web and mobile applications, performing system integrations, and enabling digital transformation. We also specialize in data integration, data analytics, and migration from legacy to modern systems. Apart from end-to-end application development, we also provide custom solutions to enterprises for web and mobile, very specific services within the software development lifecycle, UI, UX, design, microservices, DevOps, and cloud. Our flexible staff augmentation services provide clients with on-demand skills and resources to help meet organizational and business objectives. On to our speakers for today. I have with me Scott Seabolt, our CTO, and Akshay Srivastav, our AVP Delivery. Hello again, Scott. Hi, Akshay. Let's hear a bit about yourselves now.
Hey, Pranshu. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Pranshu. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Akshay Srivastav, and I'm associated with WalkingTree Technologies as an Assistant Vice President of Delivery. I have been a part of the IT industry for the last 16 years and with WalkingTree since January 2022. Speaking of my experience and journey so far, I have dedicated the last few years to helping shape the agile practices across teams and organizations, mostly owing to my passion for agile. And the last few months with WalkingTree, I have been working towards building a holistic capability around DevOps and test automation, really to accelerate the whole journey for our customers. With me, I have Mr. Scott Seabolt, who is the Chief Technology Officer for WalkingTree. Scott, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, thank you very much, Akshay. And hello, everyone. Like Akshay said, I'm Scott Seabolt. I am the Chief Technology Officer at WalkingTree, and I have so many years in technology, the technology business, either as a control engineer or really a production support person, to a developer, to an actual test architect, and then solution architecture, system engineering, that kind of background. So a lot of years involved in pretty much all phases of the SDLC. And then, so a lot of time in manufacturing as well. So been around a long time, probably longer than quite a few of you have been alive, probably. So long time. I've been with WalkingTree for about a year, a little over a year. And but I do go way back with the two co-founders, one of them 20 years, the other at least 10 years. So even though I've only been technically with WalkingTree for a little over a year, I feel like I've known WalkingTree since its entire existence, almost 14 years ago. So very excited to be here today. And today we'd like to talk about how enterprises need to be mindful of the approach that enables them to optimize and accelerate their QA capabilities. And that's really in order to stay ahead of their business outcomes, right? And in terms of an agenda to get you there and to kind of give you, a good view of what it takes to accelerate your Agile and DevOps journey with continuous testing, we'll be focusing on about 4 items, with the 5th item you see on the agenda there being, some of the key recommendations from WalkingTree. But to begin with, we'll start talking about the alignment or aligning software quality approach with digital priorities, right? So how does software quality and the approach to that align with the priorities of modern day, the digitization, right? And these ever-changing priorities. And then the significant gap in improving continuous testing capabilities, right? So when we talk about significant gap, you'll hear us talking a lot about, different skill sets and expertise that has to be formed around keeping a good continuous testing capability within your organization. And then we'll lead into talking about pure play quality approach, and that's leveraging so that you can get a consistent quality and expertise. We'll kind of define what pure play means in this context. Some of you may know, some of you may not. So we'll give you a little bit of a definition there and kind of paint that picture and tell the story around that. And then, we'll talk about how to future-proof, right? So future QA capabilities require the right balance of speed and quality. So, and I suppose that balance between speed and quality has been around a long time. And it used to be that, when I was in the test organization as an architect, I used to say, you can either have speed or you can have quality. So that was the constant fight, right? But thank goodness now we've got a lot more automation around things with not only with the agile methodology of developing and putting that methodology around the SDLC. You've also got DevOps that we can throw in there as well that helps the development cycle speed up. So we'll talk about how to future-proof yourselves around that and finding that balance between quality and speed, and try to merge them a little bit too so that we get both, right? So we can accelerate those together. And then finally, we'll end up with, just some of the key, I'd say key recommendations by WalkingTree, more of what we've observed, in our capacity as, as a technology-focused IT services company, who, by the way, is also, and Akshay will talk about this more, but also developing a good center of excellence around quality assurance as well. So, with that, we'll begin on talking about aligning software quality approach with digital priorities. I saw a recent study by Forrester that emphasized the need for organizations to test early. And, when I think about that, I think about that whole approach of shifting left. I think even 10, 12 years ago, we were talking about how can we shift left, right? How can we do more testing earlier in order to really get a better quality code once we finish development and then send it on to its next phase, right? So we'll talk about, or this study, I should say, talks about testing early, testing often, and then and automatically, and that is really to improve time to market, right? So put all those things together: test early, test often, and with automation in order to improve your time to market, and with quality, of course. And as a result, decision makers across the industry have now started looking towards pure play QA providers for consistency and quality and guidance. And enterprises today they're maneuvering through escalating costs and business uncertainty and changing technology, changing market conditions, right? And I think we can all relate to that. And I guess I've been saying some of that for the past 30 years, but especially in the last 2 to 3 years, right? The last 2 years, we've really seen business uncertainty. We've seen a lot of changes in technology, and the market conditions just seems like they're very, very roller coastery like, right? So with all that happening, we've got to adjust. So that's really the focus has shifted into automation and digitalization while adapting to these complexities, right? Where really quality assurance, along with Agile and DevOps capabilities, become the key to success, right? And I think Akshay, I know you are, you're an Agile coach. I call you an Agile evangelist because it's hard to get into a conversation with you that we don't eventually talk about Agile. So from your experience, being an Agile coach for quite a long time, let's talk a little bit about, if you would, about just how kind of DevOps capabilities have led to success in that area.
Absolutely, Scott. And I think, you articulated the alignment pretty well. And I don't think there's any ambiguity in saying that, DevOps has really played a key role in the past for accelerating agile practices across the industry. There's upsurging competition, shifting market dynamics, like you said, and these have been driving businesses towards innovation and acclimation more and more. While Agile brings a significant amount of flexibility and adaptability, DevOps helps in streamlining continuous and iterative delivery process, resulting in greater benefits altogether. And when we talk about these greater benefits that Agile and DevOps together bring in, increased collaboration between people, faster releases, shorter feedback cycles, increased customer satisfaction. These are just to name a few of these benefits that we can expect from bringing Agile and DevOps together. So, as we integrate them, Agile really provides a framework and culture for really quick deliveries. And what DevOps does in alignment with Agile is reduces the steps, or should I say maybe failure points in building and releasing the software, right? So while Agile and DevOps both have their own set of benefits independently, brought together, it brings in a even more holistic kind of synergy that can really help push forward the business outcomes. Right. And as we talk about Agile and DevOps, and we started talking about continuous testing, now, in my experience so far, I have been an Agile coach for some time. I've worked with teams, I've worked with businesses to really help them understand their own benefits in terms of Agile and understand why the change of process or change of thought really brings in that level of maturity into the execution. But even so, right, we've observed mostly a lot of the organizations are still struggling with keeping up with Agile testing requirements, right? While Agile and DevOps, they speed up the development and delivery processes, continuous testing and keeping in pace with testing requirements, even from an Agile standpoint, are still continuing to be a struggle for most organizations. As a result, we end up implementing kind of mini waterfall sprints across the Agile process where testing continues to be a handoff between developers and testers. And more than 50% organizations today agree that frequent releases will have a positive impact on their digital objectives, right? Everybody is striving towards frequent releases, but they are still on a monthly or even quarterly release cycle, owing to the complexity of testing. And believe it or not, surprisingly, only 13% organizations today are even able to make a fortnightly release cut. So this is essentially because we are still reliant on nurturing teams and skills for quality assurance needs, while leveraging specialized skills and expertise of quality assurance providers might be able to address these significant gaps in the overall improvement of continuous testing capabilities. And that is something that most organizations are now leaning towards, but that continues to be a challenge for most of the industry.
Absolutely. I mean, with the rising need for frequent releases, continuous testing with DevOps is really essential, right, for businesses to meet customer expectations, because they want both that speed and quality, right? And these characteristics can only be developed if the software development integrates with a strong QA framework within both Agile and the DevOps ecosystem. When I was testing, I was probably more along the lines of when I was test architect, that is, we did more of the traditional methodology, and I'm talking about even before Agile existed, and even after Agile existed, right? It was, how in the world are we going to keep up, right? And usually it reminded me, being in test, it reminded me of a a catcher in baseball. So right now, I'm a big Atlanta Braves fan. We're in the playoffs, and I think about that as I think about the catcher position in baseball. And I forget, we got a lot of cricket fans here, and I think that's called the wicket keeper, I think. But, as a catcher, basically you're just sitting there catching. You're waiting for not only the pitch to come, but the batter to swing to figure out what you got to do, right? You're going to catch the ball if the batter doesn't swing, or if they did swing, you got to catch the ball if it's fouled off. So really you're just sitting there waiting, and I sometimes think about, well, is it going to be a baseball or is it going to be a soccer ball or football, depending on where you're at in the world? So you don't know what you're going to get, but you're sitting there waiting, right? So it was more of that phase, because your testing phase was after your development. And so now with Agile and DevOps, right, and this continuous testing, we're more part of that process. So it's not as big of a surprise. And I guess, too, maybe we should just step back, and maybe not everyone understands the concept of continuous testing, right? Because it's just like in this industry, we have a gazillion buzz phrases from time to time, right? But continuous testing, just to try to define it, it's a software development process, in which applications are tested continuously throughout the entire software development lifecycle. And the goal of that continuous testing is to evaluate software quality across the SDLC, and providing feedback earlier and enabling a higher quality and faster deliveries, right? So that's kind of the point, is to kind of move that testing to be part of that SDLC. Now, coming from an old school world, right, that transition is undoubtedly complex, and it needs a huge shift in mindset. But it results in a much more efficient, what we call a trinity between Agile, DevOps, and continuous testing. And that's been termed, if you hear the term, that Dev Test Ops, right? So when we first started implementing Dev Test Ops for our customers, we could distinctly observe that when testing was being performed across various stages of development, defects were discovered and resolved early in the cycle. And that resulted in a faster delivery and higher quality software, right? And oh, by the way, it is also much more financially efficient than waiting to the end of the cycle and doing your testing in a phase where, okay, your development's done. It's been a while since the developers may have even seen the code, right? So just more expensive to fix those issues. So it's that concept is not new, but it's that, shifting that testing left, and this continuous testing, certainly does that for us. That kind of leads us into, something I think that we've seen, and that's around this pure play, right? So the pure play quality approach, leveraged for consistent quality and expertise, right? So as we look at this concept, right, a lot of us may be thinking, hey, I know what pure play is. I know what a pure play approach is. Others of you may be saying, what in the world, what in the world is pure play, right? So pure play is basically a pure play company really focuses solely on a particular product or activity. And most enterprises today are inclined towards leveraging pure play QA approach. Recent findings, I saw some article at some point, probably within the last 3 or 4 months. And that finding had indicated that functional testing capabilities are kind of broad, are getting more and more outsourced amongst organizations, right? And the majority of those believe that pure play providers ensure a lot more consistency and quality. So as Akshay mentioned earlier about being reliant on nurturing teams and skills, what is largely not realized is that the challenge behind expediting that, the required development QA capabilities are more strategic in nature. And, mostly because decision makers find it difficult to convince their people to embrace new processes. So, and speaking of processes, I was kind of reminded of that last weekend. I helped my brother-in-law move into the the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. And in that move, we're trying to figure out how in the world do we make this thing speed up? How do we make it faster, right? Do we unload the truck at the stairs, at the elevator and of the apartment complex and then move it all the way down the hall, or we take it up? And so finally we had to, my approach was just, once you get it off the truck, take it and put it somewhere in the apartment and you're done. But actually, he was right. Actually, what worked for us was we pulled things off the truck and we just unloaded the truck, and then we moved to the next, step in that process and moved it up, and then eventually got it into the apartment. So I had to adjust a bit, right? But in order to serve the strategic business needs, organizations need to integrate CI and CD, and you're going to have to fine tune both your processes as well as your technical frameworks. And along with that specialized expertise around continuous testing that can help keep the agile pace, right? So, and I suppose to some extent, right? I mean, agile, we've always done some testing, right, around an agile space. What's not always done is that your functional testing, right? So, your unit tests are there and everything. Sometimes your functional test is still pushed out to a phase. So what we have to do when we want to bring all that into that agile mindset, we have to keep up pace, right? And this continuing and getting into that continuing testing through automation and so forth is what allows us to keep pace, with an agile development methodology. So, all that's just about the need, right, for increased productivity and efficiency.
Yep, very true, Scott. And this is something that even I have come across largely in my experience. Like you said, shifting to a different process or trying to convince people to move to a different process. Being an agile coach, I can tell you that is no walk in park. Right? Implementation of agile practices across teams who are so comfortably well set in their ways of the development life cycle. It has been a roller coaster ride, really. And
you're by the way, you're talking about me, right? Because I was one of those agile deniers for a few years. So, sorry, go ahead.
But thankfully, you were far.
Now I'm a fan, by the way.
Inclined towards agile by the time we got to know each other. So that's one of the advantages I got with time. But something that I've seen mostly with people who are not so easily inclined towards change is that shifting to a different process has always been difficult for them. And especially for internal teams, it has been difficult for them to accept it. But what's really surprising is that any change in process is readily approved by them when it comes with a phase of specialized expertise. Right? Internally, it's difficult to accept. But when a specialized phase comes out externally, they are ready to accept it. And that is something that I've largely observed in my experience coaching agile teams. And that is the flavor that pure play QA providers really bring into the ecosystem. So pure play providers focused on a center of excellence around quality assurance, bring in that guidance, that support, and expertise to really handhold the Agile and DevOps journey for their customers and accelerate with an efficient integration, right? With continuous testing, which includes automation suites integrated with CI/CD pipelines, gated quality checks, static code analysis, and unit test coverage. So what I really want to bring into the table is that, there is testing and then there is quality. Mostly what happens is that we confuse testing with quality assurance. Testing is a part of quality assurance, no doubt about that. But quality assurance is more than that. Quality assurance is really making sure that we are adhering to any quality standards across the delivery life cycles, right? I mean, when we talk about testing, how many times do we talk about static code analysis? And even how many of us are really doing that, right? When we talk about testing, how many of us really think about whether or not we have the right amount of unit test coverage done, right? When we talk about unit testing, we say that's the developer's job. That's not a part of testing. That is quality. Right? Automation and integration with CI/CD pipelines to create gated quality checks. Right? This is what really enables us to release faster, release on demand. Right? So, and these are some things which are mostly overlooked across testing practices throughout the delivery process, right? Because most of us are thinking that's not my job. And this is what is resulting in a dire need for focused and siloed testing, right? And this is what is leading to a slowdown in the release cycles. So what we really need to do is, like Scott defined, pure play, right? And any organization that focuses on a single activity or a single product, focused and siloed approach towards quality assurance as opposed to testing is really what brings in that outcome that we expect from a pure play QA approach, right? So that's essentially why most organizations today are really inclining more and more towards leveraging pure play QA capabilities and trying to get a holistic grasp on quality assurance for the delivery life cycles. Okay. All right. So we talked about building and nurturing capabilities, and we talked about leveraging pure play providers to ensure consistency. But there are a lot of questions still unanswered, right? What is the right approach, right? Do we build our own teams? Do we leverage pure play providers? How do we solidify the future of quality assurance? How do we make our implementation scalable? Right? How do we measure the improvement of quality assurance capabilities? And how do we realize the benefits? Right? How do we realize the benefits of integrating continuous testing further? The integration alone can't be the end of it, right? I mean, we can integrate it, but how does it scale? How does it perform in the future? Right? Are we really making sure that the investment on Agile, DevOps, and continuous testing that we're doing today, this investment is not going to fade out very soon, right? And I think, like Scott mentioned, the last couple of years, the need for technology and technology itself diversified rapidly and quickly, right? I mean, it was just overnight that people realized that we need to digitalize more. We need to start learning how to interact virtually. We need to start learning and implementing technology that can really help us survive in that ecosystem, right? And that was a hard lesson that we all got to learn, but I think it made us realize that things can diversify quickly, and it's important to future-proof our investment, right? So that such changes do not impact us to a very large extent. And I remember 2 years back when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we were not really prepared. And quality assurance, when we talk about quality assurance capabilities and we're trying to future-proof Agile, DevOps, and continuous testing Trinity, as Scott calls it, right? I think it's important that we put a lot of thought around, what are we really trying to accomplish? How do we measure it? How do we really understand if it's scalable for the future? and making sure that this can survive any rapid changes that come along in the environment. Right, Scott?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. And I was just kind of looking at some of the Q&A out there, and I know we can't answer all of these live, but Tom, I'll answer your first question. I think your question around, can we have a session on when you're agile testing isn't that agile? I can give you several examples. I think it's a good idea to do that, is to take a session on that. I think it's a real good idea. And I have plenty of examples where my agile testing definitely was not agile-like. So that's a really good question. And I think that'd be a good idea to have a session. So maybe Akshay and I can talk about that. And but that is what you're saying around future proofing is so true. And I think as we evolve towards integrating more AI and ML into this whole thing, test automation goes further into future proofing QA possibilities across industries. And as we see an increase in the frequency of releases, and we're getting pretty good at that now, right? For the most parts, there's still areas where, and companies I'm sure that struggle, and we work with some of them and have to kind of work them towards that, where they are doing more frequent releases. But as we see an increase in that, the feedback cycle shortens, right? And we're able to better adapt to changing market dynamics and fluid customer needs, just like the pandemic really accelerated things like that. And I like that we're taking that bad thing, and now we're like, okay, it was kind of a wake up for a lot of us, not just because we need to react to major events like this, whether it's COVID-19, maybe it's a hurricane like that we just saw in Florida here in the U.S. So we want to be able to react to those things, certainly, but hey, wouldn't it also be great just as the market changes, right? So we can really adjust and provide those needs for our customers, right? So when we run into issues, like what we've seen with supply chain issues and those kind of things, right? And to address those, really every evolving testing needs, most organizations will need to take really a combined approach and leveraging both those specialized pure play providers and large system integration experts. And they'll need that for scalability across those new and existing relationships. And I think where I'd like to go next, actually, is let's talk about some of the key recommendations, right? And when we say recommendations, this is really around some of the things that we have witnessed, in WalkingTree, working with our different type clients. And so as a recommendation, just from a technology leader standpoint, our technology leaders should ensure, clear alignment of QA impact on, larger digital priorities. So making sure that you're considering your QA impact along with, just all the other priorities, right? Don't make it an afterthought. So taking a combined approach to address the lingering QA needs and leveraging pure play providers to gather the expertise and upskill, right? So you may also upskill your own internal ecosystem. At WalkingTree, we focus towards helping our customers adapt to those different testing strategies, identifying gaps, and we help them resolve those gaps in the process. Along with, implementing, their implementation to their current Agile and DevOps journey, right? So we try to help you marry those two together. And maybe before we can get out of here, I see there's also a question on, how those two are relatable between Agile and DevOps. Certainly, I'll leave you some time in here, Akshay, to maybe answer that question. But we help with that, right? That is definitely something that we can help. And specifically, you got an Agile coach on the call. So, we specialize in continuous testing integration. And we add a lot of focus on automation, right? Try to support those robust frameworks around digital, cloud, mobile testing. And we work towards optimizing those partnerships, really by helping customers navigate through those challenges. Because we're having to deal with, in an age where we got to accelerate both speed and quality, right? It can't be, like I said before at the beginning, a long time ago, and I have literally made the statement and told my business clients within an internal company that, hey, you can either have speed or you can have quality. That's no longer the case, thank goodness, right? So I'm eating my words in that, thankfully. But we at WalkingTree, we've got really many years. I would say 8 to 9 years of practicing Agile, and today we've got specialized centers of excellence around DevOps and quality assurance. And I hope that this webinar is not necessarily an advertisement for us, but I hope you'll keep that in mind. Should you ever have need, we're, I believe, a strong technology services company, and can definitely help you in that space, whether it's your Agile development, DevOps, or continuous testing. So shameless plug there. Akshay, if you want to kind of hit the closing thoughts, and then I know we've got a couple of questions left out there as well.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. And yeah, I think that, some of these recommendations that you've put in, combined approach to address QA needs, focus strategy, and, optimizing results really adds into that trinity that you very candidly defined for us today. and Trinity is something that I think I'm going to remember for a long time. So thank you for that. But yeah, I think, leveraging specialized skills that are focused on a specific outcome, integrated along with upskilling your own people towards that specialization, which any pure play QA provider is bringing in, and really merging these two into an integrated solution towards moving forward in the Agile and DevOps journey. That really plays the key role into how we want to take continuous testing forward and make sure that we are able to leverage most out of the capabilities that technology brings to us, right? So that was kind of the message that we had for today's session. So thank you so much, everyone, for your patience throughout the session. We had a great time talking about Agile, DevOps, and continuous testing, and we are hopeful that you were able to go back with some constructive takeaways. Maybe we were able to help some of the outstanding questions that you may have had on your minds as you came into the webinar. So that's what we are hopeful for. So I hope we were able to answer some of your questions already. And here we would like to open up the forum for any more questions that you may have, and that can be facilitated by Pranshu.
Yes, thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Scott. I think we do have a good suggestion. We should be having a session on how you work out how agile testing is in that agile or not. So that is noted. We have a question from Nicholas. What are the good testing types used in agile testing? TDD, ATDD, BDD, I suppose that's behavior, BDD, and explanatory testing, etc. What?
So actually, I'll let you maybe elaborate on that. But all that you mentioned there, all those techniques, whether it's BDD, BDD, TDD, or ATDD, right? Kind of BDD falls in kind of the middle of that between TDD and ATDD. So big words, but yeah, all of those are yes, those are techniques that are used in agile development. Actually, I don't know if you want to say anything more on those. I know we've got some experience around, even around using Cucumber for BDD and so on, and certainly test-driven development's not new to you either. So, so I'll let you expound if you would like.
Sure. So when we talk about test-driven development, there's a lot of there are a lot of concepts around what TDD is, how should we implement TDD, how should we implement TDD. But essentially, the way I look at test-driven development is it fosters more collaboration between development and testing, right? In making sure that the test cases are written in collaboration with developers. The developers have good visibility around the test scenarios that are to be executed. And really aligning each other to each other, making sure that we are able to synergize the development and testing process. And that is essentially what makes us more agile, right? Instead of being a handoff, TDD makes it more collaborative between development and testing. BDD, on the other hand, if you look at it, writing user stories in itself is a behavior-driven technique, right? When we are talking about the who, what, and why of what an agile user story answers for, that itself is a very behavior-driven methodology. When it comes to agile testing and when it comes to test automation, from an automation engineer's point of view, synergizing between what is being done on an application manually and what we want to automate on any application using any framework for that matter, right? How do we really create a merge between both? And the automation engineer is really able to visualize what is being done from a user behavior perspective and write that into a piece of code, right? So essentially, from an agile perspective, yes, test-driven development brings in that synergy that can help shift our testing left. And behavior-driven technology really, or behavior-driven development really helps us understand workflows, use cases, and the application's functionality more from a user's perspective, right? And we all know when it comes to code, the code doesn't make mistakes. The code works as it is written, right? But the user does. Users make mistakes. Users are human, right? It's not always necessary that they will click at the right place. They will click on the right button, right? And that is where more and more scenarios from a user behavior perspective come into picture and really help us speed up the testing and make sure that we are able to think through, visualize, and cover for such failure scenarios. So that's what brings in more agility from a BDD perspective. Okay.
Right, we have one last question. I'm not really sure how are these both relatable, Agile and DevOps? How are these both relatable, Kiraj?
So Agile is one, DevOps is one, right? There is a lot of confusion around this around the world that Agile cannot exist without DevOps, or DevOps cannot exist without Agile, which is not true. They both have their advantages independently, and they both have greater advantages when brought in together, right? Like we mentioned earlier in our presentation, that Agile brings in the framework and culture for quicker deliveries. And DevOps really helps eliminate some of the failure points, eliminate some of the steps, automate some of these processes so that we are able to take our delivery across environments, across to a blue-green deployment probably, where we can think about releasing on demand. So they both have their own advantages. They both exist independently, and brought in together, they both have a synergy that really helps streamline a lot of stuff. And when it works in a trinity along with continuous testing, that brings in the whole world of benefits. Right, Scott, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you articulated that pretty well. I mean, like you said, they're all, individual concepts, I would say. But yeah, when you put them together, and especially I like the fact that and we could even include, when we start talking about combining Agile, DevOps, then we throw in security testing around that too, continuous testing. we'll probably have to find a way to to say all of that at one time, right? But no, we call it Agile DevOps here in WalkingTree, and there's just such great benefit to combining both of them. And then you wrap your testing around that too, and we'll include when you hear DevSecOps, right? Let's go ahead and include security testing in that as well, and say that DevTestOps. So with all those combined, I just think there's great synergy between all of them. So no, I'd say that's you articulated it well. That's really all I would add to it. Kind of summary.
So I guess that's all the questions that we have. Thank you everyone for joining us once again. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Scott. We'll be seeing you again in a couple of weeks' time with another new session. So I hope you look forward to it, and we meet again in the next session. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good rest of your day and good night.